So next up, I want you to meet the Reverend Stephanie Wild. Now, Stephanie, hello.
Hi, Angela. So happy to be here.
Yes, great to see you. This is Stephanie's book. It is The Art of Forgiveness, and you have, I think, one of the best subtitles we've ever had at the Author Incubator. How to Get Past It Without Letting Anyone Off the Hook. So tell us about the book, and how are you the leader of this movement? How did you come to have this message?
Goodness gracious. Right. It's been 40 years for me of spiritual growth.
Also started when she was 11.
Oh.
Earlier.
No, let's go earlier.
2.
Closer. And when I finally realized that I was free from the childhood trauma that I'd been through, I looked back and I said, how did I do that? And that's what I wrote down. So I'm going to save everybody else those 40 years.
4 decades of misery.
Yeah.
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 So, but here's what I think people want to know is, like, everyone said the Bible says forgive 7 times 70. Everyone's like, you have to forgive. And then you hear this thing that coaches and spiritual people like to say, oh, when you forgive, it's for you. And you're like, oh, okay, can I just buy myself flowers? Like, how come I got to let this guy off the hook? For me, that doesn't seem like it adds up. So how did you add all this up?
Right. So there's a lot of confusion and torment around this notion of forgiveness. And most spiritual teachers will tell you that it is key to happiness, that it's so important. There are 2 meanings to forgiveness. Now, one is to pardon, like to pardon a crime, to let someone off the hook. But the other is to live free from anger and resentment.
I like that one.
Exactly. And that is what I do, and that is what I write about, and that is what I can teach other people to do. It is absolutely nothing to do with the punishment of the other person.
Because don't you feel like we sort of, I'm going to use a trite phrase, but kind of like victimize the victim? Like, you get raped or beaten, and then we're like, you should forgive that guy. And you're doing it wrong. Like, now you've been victimized wrong. Where do you put in forgiving yourself into this equation? And where do you put in just all of the, not doing it right, the victimizing the victim side of the conversation?
Right. It's not an intellectual process. It's a layered process. It's a spiritual process. And it's important to take it moment by moment. It's about accepting where you are right now, accepting all your emotions just as they are, and then taking responsibility for your own happiness and moving forward in a way that makes you happy, not that makes anyone else happy, not that makes anyone else approve of you or your life or the way that you're going about things.
I love that. I think it's such a powerful message. So Janet asks, reflecting on your experience writing, what would you have done differently? And Angie asks, what was the biggest mistake that you made when writing your book? So sort of similar questions from Janet and Angie. What would you have done differently, or what mistake did you make?
Honestly, I don't know. I just did what you said.
I
did what you said. I've been a writer, published writer since I was 15, and an advertising copywriter for the last 15 years, but I was never an author. So there's a big difference. And to become an author, I did what you said. I think that we should trust others who've gone before us. We should trust experts. And that's what I did. That's what I'd recommend.
Well, thank you. I love that answer. It worked out perfectly for me. I didn't know that's what you'd say. I want to talk also for people. I'm going to talk about myself for a minute.
Oh, right. I'll let you do that.
No, you stay with me because I think we might have the same thing here.
Okay.
So when I started off my first 20 years or so working, I worked in various industries, often doing books, but I did things like espionage books, technology books, finance books, things like that. And then I would take the money that I earned and I would go to Barnes and Noble and I would buy new age spiritual self-help books, or I would pay for going to a Tony Robbins conference or a landmark conference, or I would go to the Seekers Church, or so I was always taking all my money and pouring it into my spiritual quests. But I didn't think that was a path. Like, I was still attached to a traditional job making software. Something, that didn't feel, I don't know, so woo-woo or whatever words people use. So I feel like you're sort of like me in that you ride this line, and I look at you and you look normal.
Right.
You work in corporate, you have a background in corporate, you can certainly have conversations about, seamless, robust end-to-end technologies, solutions, right? Enterprise grade solutions. And then there's the side of you, the Reverend Stephanie Wild side of you. How do you bring together your personal spiritual journey and then things like I'm an advertising copywriter? Where do you find that those two meet, and how has that changed over the process of writing the book?
Great question. Yes, for a long time I kept them very separate. I didn't want to go to work and be the woman that people pointed to and said she speaks to dead people. As you know, I'm a psychic medium. But that changed as I experienced personal growth, as I developed myself further, and as I made a commitment to become integrated, I guess you could say, a whole person, because we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And when I started to bring that to work, to my corporate job, I found that people responded with love, with curiosity, with great interest. And so I was able to be where I am and help people from there. So the journey continues, and it's not always comfortable, but that's spiritual growth.
So here's what my contention is that the more you practice the art of forgiveness, the way that you define it, the more that integration just happens naturally. Because I've watched that over and over with our authors, is when you come into that space of wholeness, that forgiveness is just, I think it's the highest spiritual practice to create space for the integration of who you truly are. I'm going to ask you one more. Deborah says she's having trouble believing she's worth investing in herself. And she says for the author incubator, but I would say probably for anything, Deborah. So if somebody's wondering, am I worth investing in? How did you answer that, having gone through trauma yourself?
I felt the anxiety in my body, and I just let it be there. And then I dug a little deeper, I listened a little more closely, and it just felt right. Take some moments of stillness for yourself, and you'll find that you are worth the love of the universe. We all are.
Yeah.
We all are. And if we follow that feeling, it will lead us to happiness.
That's it. You are worth the love of the universe. Reverend Stephanie Wild, The Art of Forgiveness. Please get your copy now on Amazon. Stephanie, thank you so much, and congratulations